New Orleans, Louisiana, in November 18, Jordan Hicks. The Saints defeated the Eagles 48-7, photo by Wesley Hitt, Getty Images. We all can't be Cleveland Browns fans, overwrought with the concept of Odell Beckham Jr. So, your team didn't win free agency and they've still got problem areas. That's okay. The NFL draft can solve all your problems. Well, actually, the success rate of even first-round picks is only 53%. But hey, here's hoping your team can hit on 2 rookie All-Pros a la Quentin Nelson. Also a long shot, considering they were the first rookie duo to do so since Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus in 1965, but I'll stop raining on the parade, I promise. Without further delay, here's a breakdown of each team's remaining needs. Arizona Cardinals. The rumors have almost become known fact at this point. The Cardinals are going to take Kyler Murray with the #1 overall pick. Therefore signing Terrell Suggs, despite him being a 36-year-old pass rusher, helps alleviate their needs considering they will be passing on Nick Bosa out of OSU. Therefore, the remaining moves to make begin with trading Rosen. So assuming they do so, look for Steve Keim to target offensive linemen, specifically interior O-linemen, to protect Murray as much as possible. Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons made considerable efforts to get better on the offensive line, which may not be the beloved flashy free agency move, but a quality and risk-adverse investment nonetheless. So, with the depth taken care of on the offensive end, look for Don Quinn and company to ensure the injury-ridden collapse that was last season is not a repeat. That means drafting a defensive lineman early. It is Thomas Dimitrov's goal to get an extension figured out with a Grady Jarrett, but an insurance policy like Ed Oliver at pick no. 14 wouldn't be half bad. Oh, and losing Tevin Coleman to free agency, along with Devontae Freeman playing just 16 games in the last 2 seasons combined, means you can expect YRB to be drafted. Baltimore Ravens. Ravens fans saw a handful of their favorite players leave this offseason. From their lumbering. Suggs is not only the all-time sacks leader in Baltimore, but no one man has ever played more games in the purple and black. The loss of Eric Weddle is more than filled by the signing of Earl Thomas, and calling Mark Ingram an upgrade at the RB position is more than an understatement. However, this wide receiving core is barren and Lamar Jackson needs all the help he can get through the air at this point in his career. Look for them to go WR early in the draft, then take a shot at an edge rusher to replace the loss of not only Suggs but also Zadarius Smith. Buffalo Bills. If I told Bills fans at the end of the season that they'd sign the best rapper in the NFL, they'd have been jumping through folding tables like they'd just beaten Dolphins and watched the Bengals pull off a miracle of their own against the Ravens to seal the Bills' first trip to the playoffs in over 18 seasons, assuming I would have been speaking about Le'Veon Bell. But nope, I'm talking about Mr. 80 Stings himself, Cole Beasley. Needless to say, this illustrious signing does not solve the weapons issue around Josh Allen. That being said, the Bills will look to get O-line help early, and take a stab at a relatively deep WR group with the later picks. Carolina Panthers. For the second off-season in a row, Cam Newton has spent the bulk of his time rehabbing, and I'm not talking AA. So, that clearly tells me the Carolina Panthers aren't doing the greatest job keeping my Monts upright. The signing of Matt Parody ensures the middle will be locked up, but there's still work to be done. The 16th overall pick is probably going to be too high for an interior offensive lineman in this class, aside from Garrett Bradbury, but the signing of Parody takes him out of the equation, so look for them to get younger at the defensive end early, and look for a quality starter at the offensive guard position on day 2. Chicago Bears. The Bears were among a handful of teams that had fans wondering if they were going to do anything during this free agency, especially considering they might have the NFL's golden ticket, which is the franchise QB on a rookie contract. Well, we can debate whether or not Trubisky is truly a franchise QB, so with a QB on his rookie deal, and no first-round pick or even second-round pick to speak of in the 2019 NFL Draft, one would think they would be prompted to spend some cash in free agency. But they let Adrian Amos walk, Josh Bellamy walk, and as of today their big money acquisition is CB Buster Skrine. Insert Google search here, but nonetheless, I think they've done a good job of surrounding Trubisky with talent on the offensive end. They've got 4 total picks in this draft to hit on some defensive depth at OLB, SS, and CB. Cincinnati Bengals. Some owners in the NFL are consistently striving to win, and then there are owners that are consistently trying to remain profitable, which in this day and age with the TV rights, that's not very much of a challenge. The Brown family has never shown a desire to make the big splash in the free agency world. Which means you better hit on draft picks, which to avoid bashing Bengals fans constantly, I will say they've done a fairly average job at this selection process. But it's 100% hit or miss in Cincy, it seems. Hit on AJ Green, miss on John Ross. Hit on Andy Dalton. Any 10-year career out of a second-round pick is a hit-miss on Cedric Ogbuehi. So here's hoping the Bengals hit on an offensive tackle and continue the take the draft off and enjoy the spoils of having your franchise QB, WR. Literally 4 of the 5 most important positions in the modern NFL are locked down. John Dorsey, you bubblegum chewing genius. Just kidding, draft an offensive tackle, the last missing piece, a guard to replace the loss of Zeidler to the Giants, and a safety. Page 2 Baltimore, Maryland, January 6, quarterback Joe Flacco. Photo by Patrick Smith, Getty Images. When you look at the Cowboys roster there are only 2 holes, well maybe 3 depending upon your thoughts and feelings on the guy wearing. But if despite whatever you think, Jerry thinks he's good at QB, so you're good at QB. Therefore, it's wide receiver, Cooper can't do it alone, and safety. No first-round pick this year means you better find value in your second-round pick. So, at this point it's all about who falls to you at pick. If not, take the best safety available at the time. Denver Broncos. If you're a Broncos fan, does John Elway trading for Joe Flacco give you any peace of mind that he won't draft Drew Lock with the 10th overall pick anyways? Assuming he doesn't, they made no efforts to find a difference maker on the second. We know the D-line is great in Denver, and yes you signed Kareem Jackson from Houston, but the loss of Bradley Roby still leaves the DB crew vulnerable. So the move early is either Devin White if he's there or either of the top CBs available depending on your choosing of Greedy Williams or DeAndre Baker. I myself am more prone to Baker considering the need to tackle in the game of football. My favorite NFL pastime, a Bill Belichick protege doing what former Patriot assistants do best, sign the guys Bill doesn't want anymore or worse, doesn't value anymore. But that never stops the Mike Vrabels of the world from giving Malcolm Butler $11 million a year. Maybe the Lions hit on Trey Flowers, maybe he's worth $17 million a year. And maybe Danny Amendola continues to catch the always crucial stop route on third. Is nice but he can't cover everybody. Or maybe even Devin White it. Green Bay Packers 4 years. The storyline about the Packers organization is that they don't like to pay guys in free agency, they'd rather develop from within. Well, to hell with that strategy. Preston Smith, you get $52 million. Zadarius Smith, you get $66 million. Adrian Amos, come on down for a smooth $36 million. Billy Turner, O-linemen get love too. Here's your crisp $28 million. Talk about breaking the decades-old mold there. But there's still room for improvement. I still think they need a playmaker at the linebacker position, and this draft class is entirely too thin at that position. Though, doesn't Blake Cashman from Minnesota just look like a Packer already? Hope and pray Noah Fant falls to you it. Houston Texans. The Houston Texans allowed 62 sacks last season and 54 sacks the year before for a grand total of 116. No team has allowed more than 104 in that span. Add on top of that, your future at the QB position has a litany of prior injuries already in his young career. The priority is obviously in protecting him. You franchise-tagged Clowney, went and paid for some corner and safety help. Now let's build up front through the draft. If it were me in the Houston front office, I'm throwing as many darts onto the O-lineman board as possible. Indianapolis Coltsman. What a draft. Chris Ballard. Not only do they hit home runs on their first 2 picks, they hit on Nyheim Hines in the 4th as well. However, all we heard about this offseason was about how much cap space the Colts had. And $13 million to Devin Funchess is all they have to show for it. Shame, 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 for my God is out there. If they want to get over the hump in the playoffs this season, it's going to have to be on the defensive end. Primarily up front. Get another edge rusher and solidify that pass rush. Jacksonville Jaguars. All our prayers are answered. We have Nick Foles. I'll take things never said for $400, Alex. The Jags may have had an elite defense that only needed a game manager at the QB position to ensure they could scratch out victories. The only problem is now they've had to cut into that defensive depth to give Mr. Foles $88 million per 4 years. Oh yeah, by the way, Jalen Ramsey is going to want some money here soon, too. However, if you're gonna invest in Nick Foles, you better keep him upright. Take Jawan Taylor. At least they softened the blow by bringing in Tyrann Mathieu. But Kansas City have lost both of their only pass rushers, and D. Ford, traded to SF, and Justin Houston, released. So, the answer is clear in the 2019 draft. Go pass rusher and then go home. Then come back and draft a combination of interior offensive lineman. Page 3. Baltimore, MD, October 21st. Free safety Eric Weddle. Photo by Patrick Smith, Getty Images. The Chargers have one of the best rosters in the league from top to bottom. Except for one position, and that's interior defensive line. Every team needs a space eater. A monster up front that keeps the attention of opposing offensive lines, in order to create opportunities for linebackers. So, considering the Chargers didn't make any considerable efforts to reassure that front line of defense, they will have to draft it. Look for them to interior defensive line day 1, then look to add offensive line depth on day 2, and take a flyer on the future with a guy like Ryan Finley on day 3. Los Angeles Rams. The Rams made a splash with Eric Weddle, and even managed to make room for a 1-year, $14 million deal for Dante Fowler Jr. And based off the fact that they made the Super Bowl last season, one would say they've got a pretty stout roster. The only glaring areas of weakness have to be linebacker, tight end, and maybe guard. So, with that in mind, one would assume, with the 31st overall pick, they would take the best available at one of those positions. Maybe Devin Bush falls to them, and wouldn't it be lucky for the boy wonder, Sean McVay? Miami Dolphins. I'm never here to say an NFL team is tanking, because the evidence for such would be incredibly hard to prove. However, if there ever was going to be a case in which it might be advantageous for a franchise to tank, this would be the time. In classic fashion, again, the former Patriot assistant signs a handful of ex-Patriot players in free agency to help establish their best impression of the Belichickian culture. There are countless holes on this roster apart from defensive back, so take the best player available at the 13th pick and move on to next year's draft already. I don't mean to sabotage your hopes and dreams, lonesome Miami fan, but it is what it is at this point. Minnesota Vikings. That was a close one, am I right? Losing Anthony Barr to the dang Jets would have been heartbreaking. So, they hold on to Barr, but how do the Vikings recapture the glory of the Minnesota Miracle and get back to the doorsteps of a Super Bowl appearance? Well, anyone with a brain or at least a calculator could tell you that giving Kirk Cousins $84 million guaranteed only intensified the importance of hitting on draft picks. So, drafting Mike Hughes 30th overall last year might have been a mistake, considering he only made 2 starts last season. All jokes aside, I think it's imperative they get O-line help. Cousins was under constant pressure last season, so draft one of the tackles still remaining it. Whether it's Andre Dillard or Jonah Williams, give those dynamic receivers and digs. New England Patriots. Some coaches and franchises make an effort to win free agency, and some coaches are in Barbados diving off the sandy lane in Barbados. Well, the GOAT, Bill Belichick, broke his one rule of no days off, but that doesn't mean he isn't preparing for the NFL draft, and looking for ways to replace the loss of guys like Trey Flowers and Trent Brown. He doesn't need to look far for a replacement at LT. 2018 first-round pick Isaiah Wynn will return to form this season. So the spot to fill has to be defensive end, and Clelin Ferrell has Patriot legend written all over him. New Orleans Saints. The Saints jumped up in the draft last year to take DeMarcus Davenport out of UTSA, and despite some injuries, Davenport showed the potential to warrant such a pick, and free agent pickup Demario Davis played like his hair was on fire all season. The question most still have for the Saints is who is there. The Saints don't have a first-rounder this year, so capitalizing on value in the second round will be huge. I think a threat like Irv Smith Jr. would be lethal in New Orleans, assuming they don't sign Jared Cook. Look for them to take a running back with their later pick to help soften the blow from losing Mark Ingram in free agency. New York Giants. What a rough couple of days for Giants faithful. After being promised multiple times that they did not sign Odell to trade him, only to trade him for what is equivalent to a couple dollars scratch-offs. But your only choice at this point is to hope and pray that Gettleman actually does something with these picks he's amassed. Which again, seems kind of like hustling backwards. Considering the point of the draft is to develop superstars, which they had in ODBJ, you get it though. The Giants are rumored to want to go best available pass rusher it. Woof, if that don't make you sick. New York Jets. Those of us that have siblings know that you are never looked upon with more pride and joy from your parents than when your sibling screws up. In the case of the Jets, that sibling is the Giants, who for almost 2 decades now, have been the only thing to be prideful of in the life of New York football fans. Oh, how the tables have turned. The Jets have the young QB, and won free agency. Now, does winning free agency mean you win in the regular season? No, but things look a hell of a lot sweeter in Jet World than Giant World. They still need big-time WR help, unless you think Josh Bellamy and Jamison Crowder are game changers. But they have to take Quinnen Williams it. Or if they are feeling risky or still think Leonard Williams is their guy, then take Josh Allen it. Page 4 PITTSBURGH, PA, October 22, Antonio Brown. Photo by Justin Burrell, Getty Images. Mr. Big Chest is in Raider colors. Antonio Brown has had no less than 1,250 receiving yards and 8 TDs since 2013. And despite being 30 years old, he has shown no signs of slowing down. So the wide receiver position has been solidified in Oakland. The problem, however, is that's about all that's solidified in Oakland. Hell, the QB isn't even guaranteed to be the starter when they make the move to Vegas. We all know the draft is a lottery, and the Raiders have the most $25 tickets available. 3 first-round picks in 1 draft is their chance to hit on 3 impact players. Or pull of Cleveland Browns circa 2012, Trent Richardson. They need a pass rusher first, DB second, OT third. Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles didn't do much in terms of bringing in new free agents, apart from Malik Jackson. However, they made a conscious effort in retaining the services of pivotal players for them. Guys like Brandon Graham, Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey, and Paul Warrillow. So, unlike majority of the NFL, the Eagles won't be dealing with too much roster turnover. Though they will most likely lose Ronald Darby from an already desolate defensive backs group. But sitting all the way down at pick 25 means, unless you really like Rocky Asin out of Temple, the Eagles go either RB with Josh Jacobs or take a shot at a guy like Jeffrey Simmons. Pittsburgh Steelers. What an off-season for Steelers faithful. You lose the best receiver the franchise has ever had, no offense to Hines Ward or Lynn Swann, and you lose Le'Veon Bell. But as long as Big Ben is still there doing weekly radio hits talking critically about his teammates, things should feel right at home in Pittsburgh. As for the draft, they always seem to take a WR even when it seems like they don't need one. But they move it. If they don't take a corner it. I know they like what they've seen out of Vance McDonald, but they typically rotate 2 TEs anyways. San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers made a splash by trading for edge rusher Dee Ford from Kansas City, and, despite his injury history and tendency to line up offside in crucial situations, I think it's a great move. They have spent copious amounts of picks on pass rushing to only produce run-stuffing defensive linemen. So, why not bring in a guy who strictly rushes the passer? As for the draft, I don't think this removes them from contention to take another D lineman here. Though I do believe it opens them up to trading down in the draft, with their 2 biggest holes on the defensive end. One thing's for sure, they need a wide receiver badly. Seattle Seahawks. A year removed from an off-season in which majority of the national media expected Seattle to regress, they are coming off a 10-6 season. Placing the franchise tag onto Frank Clark at least delays the inevitable contract extension, or lack thereof, just one more season. This is a football team that's numbered. However, this team has bigger priorities as of now, like getting Bobby Wagner some help on that defense so he isn't such a one-man band. Starting with the replacement of Earl Thomas. Look for Seattle to use their early pick on either a safety or an edge rusher. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bruce Arians has his hands full, and not because the roster has a ton of problem areas, but because the verdict is still out on their former. Now, assuming that Bruce Arians took this job with the intentions of bringing out what he believes is the full potential of Jameis Winston, let's pass on the QB position. We know Arians is a hotshot offensive coordinator, with a ton of personality. But with the loss of Quan Alexander in free agency, I wouldn't feel comfortable entering a season with Deon Buchanan as my starting inside linebacker. Therefore I can't imagine they pass on a player like Devin White there at 5th overall. After that, they need interior O-line help bad. Tennessee Titans. First off, I have to take a minute to throw some fire on what I believe to be the worst signing of the 2019 NFL free agency. The Tennessee Titans gave 37-year-old defensive end a 3-year deal worth up to $23 million. I understand that just $10 million of that is guaranteed, but still, this is a tough pill to swallow if I'm a Titans fan. Now that that's out of the way, I think majority of the concerns coming out of Nashville revolve around that offense. Delaney Walker went down early in the season last year and they became entirely too dependent upon the run game. So, I believe they either take a chance on a player like DK Metcalf if he's available at Washington football team. Are there any more former Alabama players available? I repeat, last call for all former Alabama players. All good? All right. As far as holes in this roster in Washington, I think the first glaring issue resides in the fact that the QB gave $94 million, $55 million of which is guaranteed money, may never play football again. I think they ought to do something at that position in the draft. And just like trading for Joe Flacco ain't keeping Elway from taking another stab at getting his QB, Case Keenum ain't stopping nobody from drafting over him. That being said, defensively it's safe to assume that the signing of Landon Collins removes them from the running for re-singing "Ha Ha Clinton Dix." Which I guess they could re-sign him, but if that's not the Spider-Man meme in real life, I don't know what is. They are both box safeties. Next, latest 2019 NFL mock draft, so I think they go QB with their 15th pick, then hope to hit on a later round WR or safety.